All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a very special workshop that we have in store for you today for National History Day. I am the National History Day coordinator for Arizona, and I started in February, so I went through my first season. This is my second season, and I'm very excited. Today is September 13th of 2025. And we have a workshop in store for you with the Arizona Jewish Historical Society. Today with us, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to work with the education director of the Arizona Jewish Historical Society. He is also the education director of the Hilton Family Holocaust Education Center. And lastly, he is a Phoenix Holocaust Association board member as well. He's a man of many hats, and I really am just honored to be able to work with him and all of the great things that he does. You're going to be able to see that firsthand. He also has a very special guest that is going to be talking with us today as well, that I will let him introduce. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Tony Fusco is with us today.
Hey, thank you so much, Leonard. We really definitely appreciate partnering with National History Day and our friends over at the Arizona Historical Society. Taking a look at this year's theme, rights and responsibilities, it really is an essential component of the work and the mission that Arizona Jewish Historical Society engages in. You see, AZJHS is dedicated to exploring the lessons of the Holocaust and other crimes against humanity from other forms of genocide. The center educates and inspires visitors of diverse backgrounds through local survivor stories, artifacts, immersive medias, experiences, calls to action, community outreach, as well as public programs. We invite you, of course, to come to the Arizona Jewish Historical Society, where we currently have an exhibition on display called Stories of Survival, which focuses and features 4 local survivors, including the one that you'll hear from today, Oskar Knoblauch. We strive to inspire visitors to learn from the Holocaust to become upstanders, which is Oscar's call to action, which you'll more than likely hear about today, and to work toward a world without hatred and bigotry. Additionally, similar to NHD, AZJHS has its very own contest, the Oskar Knoblauch essay contest, audio essay contest. So please feel free to take a look at our website and to learn more. I should just say that Arizona Jewish Historical Society does preserve and celebrate the rich heritage of Arizona's Jewish communities, educates the public about Jewish historical experiences, including the Holocaust that you'll hear about today, and promotes awareness of our state's diverse history through the arts, culture, as well as educational programming. Our collection includes hundreds of oral histories and a unique community archive with about 50,000 photographs, documents, and artifacts pertaining to Jewish history, of course, in Arizona and the American Southwest. Here in Arizona, we have about 70 Holocaust survivors that call Arizona home. And all of them have stories that, of course, they grew up with while they were in Europe under the perpetration of the Nazi regime during 1933 to 1945. And today, unlike no other, we have a survivor that's played such an amazing role here in the Valley. And we have so many different projects that have his name on it. One of course, includes the holographic-like dimensions and testimony that he, of course, serves in here at the Arizona Jewish Historical Society, if you'd like to come down. But, AZJHS does work in alignment with National History Day and making an emotional connection. And as I mentioned earlier, this year, of course, it has a focus specifically on rights and responsibilities. So one of the topics, of course, that we could discuss is how did the Holocaust survivors react to the Nuremberg laws of 1935 when they realized that their rights were not protected, similar to Oskar, who was born in Leipzig and will tell you more about his experience in Germany and how he went to Poland. Another topic idea, what responsibilities did righteous have when they risked their lives to uphold the rights of others? Or to clearly define the role of the attorneys at the Nuremberg trials, who advocated for the rights of all victims of the Holocaust. And of course, you can break this down to go more specific to some of our local survivors and their own issues with rights and responsibilities in the topic that they, of course, encountered. Of course, up on screen that you can see the holographic dimensions and testimony that I just mentioned that bears Oscar's name. as well as some of the images of Oskar and I throughout the years. It's extremely important that when students make an emotional connection to the Holocaust, they understand that Arizona has legislation that basically states, came out in 2021 in HB 2241, that states that from 7th to 12th grades, Arizona students should learn about the Holocaust and other genocides at least twice. Typically, usually students in Arizona are taught the Holocaust in 8th grade as well as 10th grade world history. Here you can see up on screen some of the verbiage that goes along with the legislation that was passed. And you could also see that Holocaust can be taught in a number of different ways, not just world history. It could be taught, of course, in civics, character development, language arts. It can sometimes be infused in U.S. history when talking about its involvement in the European theater in World War II. And again, up on screen, you can see some other local survivors, whether that's Leon Melmid, who was a hidden child in France, or Bernard Scheer, who was on the Kindertransport, or I'm sorry, at Flossenburg concentration camp, or Ben Lesser in the middle there, who I was praying with, who was at 5 different concentration camps and 2 death marches and 2 death trains. All of these survivors that are local have these stories that sort of coincide with the theme of rights and responsibilities. Again, on this slide, you can see a number of other local Holocaust survivors, but what is quite different is that one of these images is not like the other. In fact, of course, you see the image of me and my mentor, Dr. White, who was number 270 on Schindler's List, or Captain Jack Nemerov, who was a liberator at Dachau and was also at Omaha Beach in 1944 on June 6. Henry Sontag, one of our oldest survivors, who was 105, or Risa Stillman, who was at Auschwitz-Birkenau. All of these survivors have their own stories that coincide with topics related to this year's theme, but one is quite different, and that is a Nazi who was in the 10th and 4th Panzer Grenadier Divisions. He was unrepentant, and he still was of the same perception and personification the years behind. Here he is, of course, in his uniform, and there he is, of course, with that same pride that he had 80 years before, wearing that uniform, the SS, of the 10th and 8th. It's important to understand that jumping into the mind of the perpetrator is extremely important to understand what had happened to a country that was conditioned and conformed. And our guest speaker today knows quite a bit about that, because his rights and the responsibilities that he had were changed overnight. And of course, Oskar Knoblauch, who you see pictured in many of these images, have met a number of our liberators, a number of our Holocaust survivors, and has worked tirelessly with people like Arizona artist Robert Sutz, who makes it a point to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Of course, World War II is no exception here, and Oskar realizes that, especially with his work with the Liberator and with those who are veterans of World War II. But it's also important to understand that the children, the descendants, like Oskar's daughter, and some of the other descendants that you see up on screen, like Nikita Khrushchev's son, Sergei Khrushchev, and Dwight David Eisenhower, General Eisenhower's grandson, David Eisenhower, as well as Captain Nemirov's son, Don Nemerov, who's pictured up on screen as well, with Robert Sutz, a descendant in a way, who, of course, his father went back to Bialystok, Poland in 1936 and told the family to leave. Unfortunately, they didn't heed that call. And for many of his extended family members, they were murdered. So he led to a life of about 30 years with a project, We Remember, which of course will have a permanent location at the Hilton Family Holocaust Education Center. You see, students have the ability to learn in many different ways. And we, of course, promote through the idea of this workshop today, the usage of the artifact, the local connection. And as you can see up on screen again, Oskar with an image of Dwight David Eisenhower. And of course, that image is signed with an American Legion book that he, of course, attended in a suburb of Ohio immediately after coming back from World War II. Of course, you can see some of the powerful artifacts, like a Star of David that belonged to one of our local survivors, Betsy Newton, some World War II items connected to our liberators, as well as even currency that was found at the Warsaw Ghetto. All of these artifacts do connect to the local survivor, and the local survivor connects to the topic, and that topic connects to the theme, rights and responsibilities. We also, of course, believe in the idea of National History Day, which is why up on screen you can see many of the students that have taken part, my own students that have worked with Oskar, students that have focused on topics related to the themes of each year, whether it be Nazi war criminals or the Nazi non-aggression pact or the Nazi-Soviet pact, or of course Werner von Braun, or many of the other, of course, topics that come from the content and the context of the theme. And the field trip. So as you can see here, there is a theme here with Dewey, John Dewey, and the idea of utilizing the primary source or making an emotional connection to the student. And that is really what we're doing here at AZJHS. We're doing just that. And that's why I just before handing over the program to Oskar, I want everyone to know here that there are a number of different resources that you can utilize. These resources come in a number of different ways on our website, but we do encourage you to come to AZJHS for a tour, maybe meet with the survivor like Oskar. And as you can take a look on our website underneath the Holocaust Education tab, you can find, of course, not only the contest that bears Oskar's name, the third annual Oskar Knoblauch Holocaust Impact Video Creator Content, which of course encourages a similar kind of approach to what National History Day does, with being able to listen to a survivor's story and then provide a creativity, if you will, of understanding that story and not only their experience, but their call to action. But for any student that would like a greater understanding of a local survivor, we do run a program once a month. In fact, our next program is October 11th with Holocaust survivor Herbert Marx, who of course survived concentration camp in France called de Gers. But next month, we'll have, of course, Clara Grossman, who survived Auschwitz-Birkenau, as we approach the 80th anniversary of liberation of Auschwitz. And as we come down, you can see all of the wonderful archive programs that we've started since November of 2019. All of these survivors have a story to tell, and all of them have a call to action in many ways that do correspond with the theme. So we do encourage you. So with that, I would like to introduce a really great friend of mine. He's an amazing mensch. He's an upstander. He is, of course, the reason in many ways as to why I do the work that I do here at the Hilton Family Holocaust Education Center under the auspices of the Arizona Jewish Historical Society. He is my hero in life. And it's such a blessing to be able to say that. He metaphorically was in the Gestapo headquarters, but in the lion's den, living and sleeping and breathing with the perpetrator. He, of course, had interactions with them, which is, in a way, the reason why he was selected to be the holographic dimensions and testimony. In other words, a testimony that will never die, that will live forever, even though Oskar is approaching his 99th year, and I know that he's going to make it to 100. Oskar is an amazing person, and it's my privilege and honor to be able to introduce to you today Holocaust survivor Oskar Knoblauch. Oskar.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Leonard. What an honor to be here, actually. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead a long time ago. In fact, I should have died being shot, not died, murdered in 1943. It would have been in Krakow, Poland, 1943. But somehow, in that twisted story of my life, there was an upstander, or two, or three, who saw to it that maybe it isn't time for Oskar to go yet. Now, what is an upstander? Tony, for the past year or two, I have heard that word over and over again in every situations, whether they're political or not, in business. The word upstander has really taken root. It's growing. Everybody is telling the other person, become an upstander, because an upstander is a person who stands up against all odds and does the right thing, even if it might endanger him. I've done it so many times right here in the United States before I became a citizen, which was unheard of because they could have thrown me out of this country. You have no right to say anything as far as politics is concerned if you're not a born American. You are still a foreigner. You came from another country. You were not born here. So basically, unless you are naturalized and become a citizen, then you are a citizen. So that's what I am. I have a beautiful document which says, with my name, that I'm a naturalized citizen of the United States. And yes, I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of this country. Because you see, in my life, I have seen the world. I've seen governments come and go. I've seen people's lives. And this country here, even though it is not perfect, is still the best and only country in the world. And it has to be preserved that way. I have learned a lot about our history. I call it our, meaning the American history. Again, it is not perfect. It is absolutely not perfect. And yesterday I was visiting my best friend, Robert. He's an artist. And I said, Robert, is your work you do, the masks, the paintings, are they perfect? He smiled and he said, no. And he said, there is nothing, such a thing as perfect. You can get near perfect. And to make it near perfect, we still have to work on it. And trust me, me at 98, I'm working like a bandit to see and put some sense into people's minds to correct all this. I was born in Germany, in Leipzig, nice Saxon, huge city. I was the youngest of 3 siblings. I had wonderful parents. We were below the middle class, all right? We were not exactly in the middle. We were just below the middle class and the poor. And we lived in an apartment on the 3rd floor, which I visited several times after the war, but the building isn't there anymore. And our next door neighbors were, of course, Germans. We were Jewish. They were Protestants. They had a son and a daughter. The son, Günther, was my age. So we became the best of friends. We practically grew up together because I was born there in the apartment. He was born in his apartment. So basically, we were like brothers. And her sister was my sister's age. They were like sisters. Germans, non-Jews, Jews, and so to speak, Germans. My father was a Polish Jew, and so was his wife, my mom. But where they were born at the time, that was the Hungarian-Austrian Empire. And when World War I started, my dad was drafted into the Austrian-German army. And he fought in that war for 4 years. He went into a war like an ordinary soldier, and he came out with the rank of lieutenant. He was so proud to have a portrait just as big as the screen of a television set. I remember it. I wish I had this. It was the most beautiful portrait, him in his uniform, with all the medals. And he had that smile on it, this victorious smile that I have done something for my country. He became a German citizen, and life was good. I went to school with Günther. We went bicycling every day. We played together. We flew kites together. We got into mischiefs together. We became the youngest soccer players in the sports club at 5 years of age. How can life change? This was just like meant to be. We were just like brothers. And that was great. But somewhere behind the facades, as youngsters, I could hear and see with my eyes that there are some people who are trying to come to power. And they all wore brown shirts with swastikas on their arm, yelling all kinds of stupid things. And I paid no attention to it, and Günther didn't pay any attention to it. They were marching down the street, and we were marching with them. We were kids. I mean, the music is playing, why not? So what changed? Well, the Nazis tried to come to power. In order to sign up people into the Nazi party, they needed to have a fall guy, somebody to blame, somebody to say, the reason we Germans don't have a good life is because we lost the war, and because of the Jews who didn't want to fight hard enough to save our country. And because of the Jews, we are now in a situation where every German is suffering. And they repeated those lies, those conspiracy theories, over and over again. In 1932, the German courts, that was before Hitler became chancellor, accused Hitler and Goebbels and said to them, gentlemen, you are spreading lies. And their answer was, yes, we know we're spreading lies. We will continue spreading those lies until people get sick and tired of hearing them and will believe in those lies. And guess what? They were right. They kept on repeating them, and slowly but surely, it penetrated with all the conspiracy theories that we killed children, Christian children, before Passover because we need their blood to bake our matzah. What an incredible, stupid, crazy lie. And people believed in that. You know, in today's world, we have politicians who actually are looking at Hitler's playbook and play each page the same way as I heard it 80 years ago. Same lies, except different people. And they're repeating them, and they're repeating them, and they're repeating them. Because they know the more they talk about it, the people eventually would say, yeah, that's true. Oh, yes, it is true. It's their fault. It's always somebody else. It's always somebody else. They will not admit to anything, to any crimes or anything they or their forefathers did many years ago. And so this is what you live with. A year after 1932, Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. Now, my friend Günther Didn't waste any time. Before I knew it, he wore a uniform of the Hitler Youth. And from that day on, he didn't speak to me anymore. He totally ignored me. Imagine a kid for 7 years to be a total friend. Now it's a total enemy. And in school, my teacher, who knew me so well, he said, no, you're not going to sit up front anymore at your desk. You'll be sitting in the back, and you will not participate in any school activities. The sports club, you dirty Jews cannot come in here anymore. Suddenly we're dirty Jews, my brother and I. The coaches knew us, not that suddenly they're in their brown shirt uniforms and screaming at us, get your Jew faces out of here. Well, they used obscenities. Well, you come home and I'm crying, and I said, what's going on? I mean, I'm a child. What is going on? And my brother is older than I. I was the youngest one. My sister was the oldest. And she has the same problem in school. We were being totally, totally ignored. My dad used to go on a bike to work. He was self-employed. Old bike. One day he was late coming home. My mom was all worried. Finally, he walks in, and my mom says, where's your bike? A 10-year-old boy in a Hitler Youth uniform stopped my dad in front of a policeman and said, Jew, get off the bike is mine. My dad looks at the policeman and like, what's going on? He says, Jew, get off the bike is his. Give it to the kid. Then we realized one thing, that suddenly the Jew in Germany, no matter what kind of a Jew it was, German or not, doesn't have any more rights. No rights. You cannot complain to anyone. You can't go to the police. You can't, there is no place to complain about that somebody just beat me up or somebody robbed me. Somebody stole things out of my store. No. You became a nobody. And the best thing they were trying to tell you is, if you don't like it, get out of this country. Well, it's okay if you can go to another country if the other country lets you in. Because you don't just walk over to another country and cross the border. That just didn't happen in Europe. In fact, European countries, they don't border just immediately with a fence, or just a sign saying this is Germany and this is Poland. They have at least about 3/4 of a mile or half a mile, which they consider no man's land. It's an open space. And that is for the guards, for the border guards to see if anybody is crossing. But that's beside the point. The point is, unless you hit somebody in another country, you can get out. So we stopped going to school. We're staying at home for 1.5 years. Don't go on the streets, because on the streets you just get beaten up. And it just so happened, because my parents had family members in Poland, and they wrote to them and said, look, can you see to it that we get some entry visas from the Polish government? And luckily, in mid-1936, they got the papers. The decree by the Nazis was this: we give you Polish Jews until this end of 1936 to get voluntarily out of this country. After that, we'll take over. We'll decide what we're going to do with you. So my dad didn't waste any time. And mid-1936, we took everything with us, everything, every spoon, every fork, every pillow, mattress, bed, you name it. Anything he bought was his, we took with us. Came to Poland. I was 12 years old. Almost 12. I was about 11, something like that. But that was great. But one problem, because I have to adjust myself now because I do not speak Polish. So you see, I know something about how do you make a connection with someone who looks at you in dismay. Who are you? Oh, the teacher introduced me and said, well, he's from Germany. And I could tell by the kids looking at me like, we don't like Germans. And then he says, he's Jewish. Oh, well, we don't like Jews because we are Christians, we are Catholics. And I said to myself, what is this going on? This is going to be an uphill battle. I came home crying. I said, I don't want to go back to school. But my mom and my dad said, you have to go to school. And they told me, and they told my brother and sister exactly what to do. They were wise. He says, pay no attention what anybody says. They hired a tutor for me. The tutor was there every day. When I came home from school, she was sitting and waiting for me. And she drilled the Polish language into me like you would take and drill a screw into the wall. She was merciless. And I thanked her for it. Because I tell you what, in less than 8 months, I spoke better Polish than any kid in the class, with a better grammar. And why? The teacher said so. Shame on you kids. Sure, he came from Germany. He was born there. Couldn't help it. But look at him. He speaks your language better than you. He knows your Polish geography and the history better than you. I became a great student. Now, the bonding was difficult because we had sports. We had soccer clubs, but nobody wanted to take me to play in a club. Why? He's a Jew and they don't know how to play soccer. Well, I tried to explain to them when I was finally speaking Polish, listen, guys, I don't know when you start playing soccer. I started when I was 5 years old in Germany. And they taught me well. I said, give me a try. Just give me a try. What do you got to lose? So speaking of a Roman Catholic, I says, I'll take a chance. Well, the chance paid off because we became the best of friends until World War II started. The best of friends. Why? Because I have proven that I can do it as good as he. We had conversations instead of going to school, of course, instead of taking the streetcar, we used to walk. Why? Because we had so many things to tell each other, to get to know each other even better. So we talked about it. I mean, can you imagine you walking for 45 minutes and you talk? He talks about his life, his family. I talk about mine. This is when you have a conversation. There is a bonding going on. There was no when he heard somebody call me a dirty Jewish name, he would put up his fists and start fighting. He says, "You don't do that to my friend." You know, it is there is something about, he, I would say, was the first upstander who stood up for me in many times. He says, "Here's what you do." He says, if some hoodlums start picking on you, just yell out Zbigniew. And you watch this going, let's see what's going to happen. And they all started and they turned around when I said that the first time, and they disappeared. Needless to say, we made plans for the future. And then, of course, September 1st, 1939, World War II breaks out, and everything, like a house of cards, is falling down. It took about 4 weeks for the Germans to occupy Poland. And then here we have the brown shirts turned into black uniforms. The SS, Einsatzgruppe, Sonderkommandos, you name it. They had so many police detachments. You cannot imagine. And of course, every Jew has to go to work. I'm 14 years old. So every day you have to work. They don't give you nothing. You work all day in the sun. You want water, they don't give you water. Food, forget about that. Food was rationed, by the way. You had to have a ration card. The Poles got a certain amount. The Jews got half of the amount. It's a starvation diet. But the idea was to get rid of the Jews. It's the cheapest way to get rid of someone if you starve them to death. You don't need a bullet, you don't need anything. Of course, by that time, Germany was very proficient in building concentration camps, which they've done in Germany. So when they came to Poland, they started building concentration camps. Poland didn't have concentration camps or death camps. They didn't need them. They had no clue. The Germans built them on their soil. Lots of them. They even, they were not embarrassed to call some of them concentration camps and some of them death camps, Vernichtungslager. Oh yeah, they labeled them openly. They had no scruples with that. But you see, it takes time. It takes time to build a concentration camp. It's not done overnight. Hitler, when he came to power, and even before he came to power, he promised the German nation over and over again, and those are his words, not mine. You can find them in any books. He said to his people that Hitler, will make Germany great again. Does that sound kind of familiar? I will make America great again. So Hitler is going to make Germany great again, and by doing so, he will establish a brand new Germany that will last 1,000 years. Imagine that, 1,000 years. He even had his architect design plans what the new Berlin would look like. The Olympics of 1936 took place in Berlin. It was actually the sports palace was already built. It could hold like 250,000 people. So what he promised in the beginning, he actually kept. He was making them great. Oh, he conquered Poland, he took Czechoslovakia, he had Austria, he took France, he took Belgium, he took all the countries in the West, and the Germans were happy. And the Jews, meanwhile, he said, I will get rid of the Jews. That was another promise. So he had to keep his promise. But he didn't have concentration camps yet. But he had the squads like Einsatzgruppen, Sonderkommandos, and he told them, listen, it's your job to get rid of the Jews. So the first phase of killing the Jews is called Holocaust by bullets. For 2 years, they were using bullets to kill Jews. They killed over 2 million with bullets alone. Of course, they complained that this is too much money. Bullets cost money. We have to find better ways. But after 2 years, concentration camps were finished. Now we can concentrate the Jews in the camps, and from this point on, we can go and find other means. They started gassing the people with trucks first, using the exhaust fumes, which was slow. And then finally they went to cycling to the pellets, which were quick. And so on, no more shooting. Now we're going to gas them. How are we going to dispose of the bodies? They start burying them. That's too much trouble. So crematoriums had to be built. We're going to burn them, and we're going to have just a handful of ashes left. How expedient was that? Meanwhile, my dad was accosted by one of those Gestapo people to unload his truck. My dad's profession was to refurbish fur coats and fur collars. And the Germans, especially the officers, they had in the wintertime, because winters in Europe are very cold, a fur collar. That collar gets yellow and orange looking when it gets old. And this man who told my dad, he had a little rank, and maybe like a sergeant, he said to him, unload the truck. My dad approached him in his good German language and said, sir, your collar needs help. This is my profession. Give me the collar and I'm going to fix it for you and have it for you next day. You know what he told my dad? You're a Jew. You just want to steal that collar from me. Go back to work. But my dad didn't give up. He says, look, I have a family. I live here and here. If I don't bring that collar back to you tomorrow, you can come and kill him. Hans Fritzsche was his name, gave him the collar. My dad got this collar brand new. It looked like a brand new collar. Brand new, because he knew how to fix it. He brought it into the headquarters of the Gestapo. That's where the man was working. And he had to go all the way up to the office to give it to him. Suddenly, the people sitting there, they said, the Jew is bribing you, and you accept a bribe from the Jew. So Hans Fritzsche explained to them what the situation was. So they all had, believe it or not, a collar. Can you do mine too? So my dad said, look, it's easier if you give me a place in a basement, because in Europe, they build buildings, they have a basement. He said, you got a basement? Yeah, give me a room in the basement. I can do it right here. I don't have to take it home and then bring it back. It's right here. So he established a connection with the worst people Germany had, the ones who basically are doing the killing. They know where and when, how many. Time goes on. We go into a ghetto. We stayed in the ghetto. The ghetto is being liquidated. And the word is out. If you don't have a job, which the Germans really need, then you will go to a death camp. And so Hans Fritzsche took me to the Gestapo and said to his superior, Eckert, give him a job. Eckert was running the whole building. Every worker in that building, non-German, was under his commission. He had to make sure that the 250 officers are probably have their uniforms pressed and altered and you name it. He had to hire all the craftsmen, and he hired all those craftsmen Jewish. Even the motor pool, the people who took care, the mechanics, they were Jews. And I'm standing there, and Fritzsche said to him, says, his father works here already, and his brother works here already too, and his sister. So we need a job for him. You can find something for him. Eckert, in his mid-40s, looked at me, and I could see the hate just kind of oozing out everywhere, out of every pore. And he says, I don't have a job for the skinny Jew. And for 15 minutes or more, they argued, give him a job, give him a job. And Eckert said, what if I don't give him a job? What will happen? Well, he's going to go to the killing camp, and they're going to kill him. And his answer was, so what? He's a Jew. He's going to die sooner or later. Let him die now. I don't care. This is what I dealt with. Now, I understood what they were saying, but I never said a word. I didn't. I could have begged. I could have said but many times, but I didn't. There was a reason why. Someone entered that room, and by the looks of it, I figured that he's a Polish man, and he was. And this guy, Eckert, says to him, Adam, emotions, and speaks very slowly in German to him, that this Jew, pointing at me, will be working with you in the boiler room starting on Monday. Something triggered in his mind when he saw Adam to give me a job. Adam comes up to me and says, what the hell is he talking about? So I translate it word by word. And Adam shrugs his shoulders and says, yeah, fine. And Eckert is looking at me, and if looks could kill, I would have been dead on the spot. He threw his hands on his hip, and he said in a mean way, he said, you stood there for 15 minutes, you didn't open your blah, blah mouth. I stood within reach. I straightened up my body like Germans do. I almost clicked my heels. And I said to him with a smile on my face, Eckert, our parents taught us never to speak unless you're spoken to. And you, sir, did not speak to me. I could see the surprise on his face. He didn't know for a few seconds what to do. He looked at Fritzsche, he looked at me. He was flabbergasted, like, oh, what just happened here? And finally, he kind of smiled. That is the day when my life was saved. He became unwillingly, unknowingly, an upstander, because that Mr. Eckert, who didn't want me, and for 15 minutes he argued he didn't care if I die. Imagine that man, for almost 2 years, for the remainder of the war, became my friend. An enemy, an arch enemy, becomes my friend, and vice versa. I mean, the guy made the stops every morning. They talked about his family, his son, his wife, his profession, the city where he's born. He told me even when he joined the stormtroopers in 1923, he became a Nazi. He was a Nazi 2 years before I was born, and he became an upstander. And you think that this would be possible? The odds were completely against it. So what happened here? I was taught to be respectful. So did my siblings. So did every German family taught their children to be respectful, especially to older or more senior people. I was, and I showed it. I watched my body language, and I maintained my silence. Because if I would have interrupted him, he would have killed me. You do not, under any circumstances, especially somebody in a rank of almost a lieutenant, you interrupt. No way. So, thanks to my parents, education, and this is what I used to pass on in schools. You have to learn to be respectful. You have to, I said, your body language gives everything away who you are. Yeah, it is. In your conversation, I said, if you want to make a connection, don't talk about yourself. When you meet the person, you talk to the person and ask questions of that person. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Do you have any siblings? Which city were you born? What do you like? What is your favorite this and that? They are things which automatically connect. But if you just start saying, oh, well, I am, don't talk about yourself. This is not about you. This is about making that connection with the other person. Talk about the other person. People like to talk about themselves, especially if you ask them to. You can get everything out and you can compare their notes and say, well, you know, we have something in common because I like this and this, maybe the same performer, the same song, whatever it is. You see, it is so simple. First of all it requires is a little time. I mean, how much time do you need for a conversation, really? Mine established a lifeline. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. Nothing better.
Oskar, you've touched upon so many different aspects of your own personal narrative. Your story with your father and Gunther and Eckert. In a way, you've touched upon the topic a number of different times. Your father, of course, was responsible for his patriotism for World War I in Germany. And of course, for that, his rights were taken away from him under the Nuremberg laws of 1935. You mentioned, of course, Eckert and the fact that, yes, he was a Nazi even before you were born, but at the same time, in his mind, maybe he felt that he was responsible and it was right for him in one way, shape, or form to show that selflessness in saving your life. So, it's extremely important for the students that are going to be watching this to understand that, yes, the chronological scope and sequence of the history of the Holocaust is extremely important to understand with regards to some of the topics that are addressed, including the Nuremberg Laws or Kristallnacht, or some of the other events that led to Oskar from 1933 to 1945, to going through some of the darkest days of world history. Oskar, how do you see this year's theme with rights and responsibilities and with your overall message with being an upstander?
Look, responsibility lies in each and every person. Yeah, when you are born, you don't come with a guarantee. There's no little tag on your little toe or the big toe that's guaranteed for life. So as you grow into this world of people, humanity, especially in a country where you still have the freedom of speech, so to speak, that's questionable too. Where do you start and where do you end? How much do you allow this freedom of speech to bend, to stretch? But still, it's there. And it's our responsibility, each and every person, to look out for the next person. And why is that? It is simple, because you see, I've been involved in many confrontations to talk to students for one reason or another. One in particular, he was on a hockey team, not just a hockey team, he was on a state hockey team or national hockey team of youth. And he was heard by the coach calling another player during the game, well, explicit Jew. And he was benched. And of course, the father complained about it. Needless to say, the lawyers decided that this young man needs to talk to me. And I asked him, I said, look, was the other guy a Jew? He says, no. So why'd you call him a Jew? And, you called him a very explicit Jew. He said, because I said, why? Was he playing better than you? Well, yeah, kind of. I said, well, what do you think players do? Just like you on a team would like to play the best you can. Am I right? He says, yes. Well, what do you think the other guy is doing? He's doing this for his team, not for his own self. He's a teammate. I said, besides, you are a teammate. It's not that you're playing one-on-one here. I said, the score belongs to the team. You are a team. You are on that team. You are on many teams. I said, as a matter of fact, the responsibility begins with each child when you're born. As soon as you get mixed with other children, if you go to kindergarten, you are already on a team. And you will be on a team for the rest of your life. No matter what you do, you go to work, you have a team. You always have a boss. There's always a coach. And you have to perform according to the specifications. You cannot make your own mind up unless you're a salesperson. You can bend the rules here and there. But as a rule, the person is on a team and you have to act accordingly and you have to be responsible for whatever you do and say. When you learn that, then right here you have a better understanding and people grow up to be more responsible, obviously. And by doing so, they become upstanders as well, because they feel that the only way to really make headways in the world is the right way. You know, the old story when old grandparents tell you, don't lie because the lies will catch up with you. This is so true. Once you start lying and telling stories, you never can get from under out of it. You continue doing that, and they get worse. And honestly, in today's big business, there is no room for lies. They can detect that immediately. You know, many times I say to the students, I said, do you think that, okay, so you're educated. I said, there is more responsibility with that. Yes, you got your education. But you yourself, what you say and how you carry out your work is important. That is the responsibility which people have to learn. It's not just I can do anything I want to do. You can if you are your own boss, okay? But not everybody can be a boss. So it is, look, I think that a couple of students asked me a question which really made sense. And it showed that they had the responsibility to ask me that question, which nobody else did, ever. Do you think, this girl says, an African-American girl, she says to me, do you think that we are being taught enough in schools about our own gruesome past history? Now, how is that for a question? And honestly, I couldn't wait to answer. And I told her, I said, you are not being taught at all. Why? You see, people don't want to take responsibility. And it puzzles me why adult people don't want to admit to something like slavery. Hello? What are you trying to cover up here? You don't want to admit about the Holocaust, about the Indian people? You see, here, this goes into a different gray area, but it has to be talked about. You cannot bury this forever. And, you know, I said to them many times, you know, the era of putting carpeting in homes is fading. You can't take anything anymore and sweep it under the carpet because you got wooden floors. Where are you going to put the garbage? Now you got to really face it. You've got it, talk about it. I faced it straight on. Golly. When I came to Toronto in 1949, got a job. They put me to work in the basement at the mail order department. My immediate boss was a retired Black teacher. He stuttered, so he had to retire. I couldn't converse with him. I didn't speak English. That man took time out to teach me as much as he could. I remember the first day, bell rings, it's 12 o'clock. So he points like, we're going to go and eat upstairs. So we go and take the elevator, we go upstairs, and there's a huge cafeteria because there was a factory, there was must be, I don't know, 500-600 people working there. And the whole thing is open, there are no doors. And I see so many tables. And we're walking side by side, and he kind of, with the shoulder, he pushes me to one side. And I asked myself, what is he doing? And then he points. The cafeteria was divided, separated, blacks on one side and whites on the other. And I am a Holocaust survivor. I smiled and I run behind him and I said, I'm going with you. I don't give a damn. I don't want to go on the other side. Yes, everybody looked at me. I said, let them look. I don't care. Hey, if you don't like my looks, look somewhere else. Okay? Going home the same way, same streetcar, same direction. Oh, he says, I see the sign for Negroes over there and the whites over here. I said, no, I want to go where I want to go. So what are you going to do? Lock me up? This is not Nazi Germany, that's Canada. What are you going to do? And everybody laughed, all the people, the black people, they were laughing, they were smiling, a sweet smile like, we get it. But it's unfortunately only you is one. But that's the beginning, don't you see? It's you have to make a stand. You can't allow this. It got even worse when I married that American girl from St. Augustine, Florida. Nice Jewish girl. And she says, well, I don't want to stay in Canada. I want to go back home. So I'll go back home in 1953. And what do you think I see there? I wanted to throw up. And I said, I'm going to do something about it. And my wife says, you can't do that. That's the South. You got to shut up. You can, this is the way they live. I said, I'm not a Southerner. I said, I'm from up here. I'm from Europe. Okay? I said, I want to say what I need to say. And I had to run a store, her father's store. And so they all wanted to come and visit to see who this guy married, this beautiful girl. Who is the Yankee? So everybody come. There were white people, black people, all over the place. And this one lady, she was the last one. She was standing up to the side, and finally she moseyed it over. And at one time when she was younger, she must have been a beautiful woman. She was with it, and she gives a little pale hand out, and she says, my name is Mrs. Harris. And so I smiled, and I said, so nice to meet you, Mrs. Harris. And she took her other hand, put it on top of mine, and her face got closer to mine. And she tried to smile, and tears came out. And she says, you are the first white man who called me Mrs. Harris. When I think back, I couldn't then, and I can't keep now to keep back my tears, because that is a total injustice not to call a person a Mrs. And right there, I said to myself, those white folks, they're going to get their thing the best way I can do it. And by golly, I treated this woman, I remember within the first few months, my father-in-law, because I had a broken down car, and he said, you need a new car. And he gave me the money I bought a brand new Buick. And she's walking out the store with a little grocery bag. And I said, Mrs. Harris, hold on. He says, I'm going to give you a lift home. She says, no, she can't do it. You cannot do that. I said, Mrs. Harris, I want you to get in the back seat, please. And she refused. She says, "You're going to get into trouble." I said, "Mrs. Harris, I can pick you up. I'm strong." "Now you don't want that." And so finally she got in. There were not automatic windows. I went and rolled down the windows. And I went, obviously, she says, "You're not going to my house." I said, "No, I know. I'm going through the white neighborhood." And I had my arm out, brand new car, driving ever so slowly. Oh, I'm at 15, 20 miles an hour through the street, and Mrs. Harris is in the back. Oh my God. The calls, the names they called me, and all I did is smile and hit my thumb up and said, "And I love it."
You,
Nobody chased me out of town.
Oscar, there was a documentary that was put out by Ken Burns, who works very closely with National History Day. And, he did a documentary called US and the Holocaust. And for those that are watching this recording, we have many survivors, just as Oscar explained and described, to where they came and left a place where their rights were taken. And coming over here to the United States during the Civil Rights Movement, they were caught on buses being told to sit at the front and not in the back. And for many of their experiences, they then had to go through what was referred to in this country, the Jim Crow laws. So in a way, the Nazis took, as Ken Burns puts in his documentary, the playbook right from us with regards to what they did from 1933 to 45. And Oscar, as our time sort of runs to a close here for today's webinar, I just want to ask you, with regards to some of the students that will be watching this later on, what advice do you have for them as they continue on their journey of research for National History Day, with their contests coming up for regionals in the spring of next year?
You cannot conquer the world all by yourselves. You have to do it together with other people. And when I say people, that includes everyone. That no exclusions whatsoever. There's no such thing. Because everyone is a person. We're all made the same way. We're all humans. Our requirements, whether you're black, green, pink, white, striped, the requirements to live is all the same. It starts with breathing the oxygen, eating food, drinking water so we have energy. There is no exception. You have to remember, the only way you're going to make headway is together. Together. I've done that. I am a witness. My goodness. You have to learn also to give sometimes, if you have the opportunity, to give another person a chance. If you give them that chance and lead them to this certain spot, they can succeed. They can change their life. They can change their lives for their kids, for generations to come. I've done that. I have proof. I've taken high schoolers who are graduated and could not get a job because they were black in St. Augustine. There was no jobs for them. Forget about going to college. I gave them a break. I said, "Do you know what? You're going to be working for me. And I'm going to make out of one a butcher." This was not easy at that time because we didn't have pre-packed meats. I know I'm running over time, but this is important. because the man, Willie, didn't want to say to me, he called me a Mr. Oscar. If I touch the pork chop with my black hands, the people will not take it. I said, they know where the door is. They can leave. He became a butcher. He became the first butcher later on in a national chain, the first black butcher, and they made him a supervisor. When I talked to him about, 3 years ago from here, made a phone call, he told me, Mr. Oscar, if not for you, I wouldn't have raised two children, one a doctor and one a lawyer. Now here is the key, you see, together. And just a little, you give somebody a chance, for God's sakes. It didn't cost me anything. He was working for me. He was salaried anyways. But he listened and he did the best he could. And look how you have to understand that he came from a family of about 8 kids and they lived over a swamp. There was no indoor plumbing, no air conditioning, no electricity. This is where he came from. So you give somebody a chance, for heaven's sakes. You work together with them and you make a mensch out of them. And mensch means a person, a human being, because he is a human being. So that's what it takes. That if each person would take one person and give him a chance, imagine what you would create.
Oscar,
Effect.
I just want to say I appreciate so much of the knowledge and your story that you were able to tell. And I mean, it was an honor to just be able to hear and be able to visualize the kind of things that not only you, but millions of other people went through. But the upstander spoke a lot to me, and I think that not only will this be helpful, for kids and their NHD projects to be able to they do a topic on the Holocaust, but also just in life, to be able to have that kind of attitude and against all odds, and in many cases, and you may not think that it's too late for somebody to be an upstander, but you can always take that step. And so I just want to thank you for giving your time and also just your knowledge and telling your story.
Listen, it's my responsibility as a human being to say and do what I've been doing. It's my responsibility. It's my duty. And I feel that way until the last day of my life. Whatever I can do, if I can change another person or two, that's great. And if they can change somebody in turn, little by little, one at a time. But if we take a multitude of people, if we can multiply this by thousands, we can speed up the process and it will make a better world. We all want the same thing, a good life. Come on. Here the people make so much difference, like, oh, you black and you white, you cannot marry. That's BS. I mean, please, let me just say, I had 3 children. I'm down to 1. Each 3 Jewish children married non-Jews. And they're happy. They've been happy all their lives as long as they were here on this earth. My daughter, my son-in-law, they live right here with me. My great-grandson's going to come and visit and spend the night tonight. He's 6 years old, going on 7 by the end of the month. There's no such thing, Jew or Christian. You love someone, marry them. There's no crime in it. Yours truly, on days when it was raining and sleet was coming down, and my good friend in Poland, Zbigniew, a Roman Catholic, had to go to church every morning before school and say his prayer. How many Catholics do that here? Before going to school, you have to go and say your prayer in church. Nobody does it. He did it every day, and so did millions of other kids. And one day when it was coming so bad, I walked into the church right behind him, stood up front, and he recognized me by my shoes, and he said in a whisper tone, "What are you doing here?" I answered the same with the question, "What are you doing?" He says, "Praying." I said, "So am I." And he said, "Here?" In church in Poland, Jesus Christ is twice the size of life, hanging on a cross, looking down in pain. And I'm standing there and looking at him and I'm praying. And believe me if I tell you that I almost saw a twinkle of smile in his eye when I stood there and prayed. Like, you've got balls to be here. And yes, I was not harmed. There was no thunder, no lightning. I was not punished. I prayed. I prayed for a better day. I prayed of having a good day in school. I never asked God for anything because he already gave us everything. Look around you. I mean, what's missing? What is missing? Nothing. It's all here. Oh, I'm praying. You know, my daughter is sick. My wife is sick. Thousands of people pray. He cannot help. That's not his job. His job was done by creating what he created, all those beautiful things. And nobody ever takes time out to thank for that because everybody's selfish. Do this for me, do this for me, do this for me. But how about saying thank you? Thank you for the beautiful flowers and the animals and the air we breathe. Nobody does that. See, all this is missing in our fiber of humanity today. People don't know what Sunday school is. For God's sakes, how is that possible? That was the best time of day or the week to be in school and mix with the people, the young people, and learn something. Anyways, look, there are things which have to be learned and talked about. And, you know, I give myself credit. What I said to you now, I used to say in schools, even though you're not supposed to talk about God or religion in school, but no teacher ever stopped me on that. No one. Because I know I was right. You know, it is. Why are we doing this to ourselves? We were given a beautiful planet, a beautiful home. I mean, we know there is no other one like this. If there is, it's so far away that you can't even get to it. So, you know, the question always is, you know, what can we do? We have to do it with youth. And, you know, the older people, they are so self-serving. They're just me, and that's it. With the young people, it has to be us, them, together. It's their life, their planet, their future.
Oscar, this program is you might know from grades 4 through 12, and your story would hit everybody from all the way to 98 to after that. So, once again, so many stories to unpack there, and this program is benefited from you being here today in so many ways. And I want to thank you, and thank you, Tony, for being able to set this up as well, and your participation and all of this. And I look forward to working with you going forward. And let's kick this off with another great year of NHD season. And yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for your time today.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank
I'll
you,
leave you
Oscar.
with this here, real quick. The 10 most important words in our language. If each student will repeat that themselves, if it is to be, it is up to me. Those are 10 two-letter words.
Awesome. Thank you, Oscar.